Jean parted the plastic balloon boy's head with his toe. It rolled a little far, but did not speak again. Charlie? Jessica said shakily. Where are they? The big ones. I don't know. My head is still spinning. Charlie glanced around quickly, then closer to the others as they surveyed the room. Everything had changed when Clay shattered the fixtures. The realistic beasts and vicious looking creatures were gone, replaced with strange, hairless versions of themselves. They no longer had eyes, only smooth, raised bumps of blank plastic. "They look like corpses," John said softly. "Or some kind of mold," Clay said thoughtfully. "They don't look finished." "It's the lights," Charlie said. "They were creating an illusion like the chip." "What are you talking about?" Jessica said. "What chip?" It's some kind of transmitter embedded in the disc," Charlie said. "It scrambles your brain, coloring it with nonsense so that you see what you expect to see." "Then why don't they look like that?" Clay pointed to posters on the wall depicted on a very cheerful Freddy Fazbear with rosy cheeks and a warm smile. "Or that," John said, found another depicting Bonnie joyfully strumming a bright red guitar so shiny it looked like it was made from candy. Shirley looked thoughtful for a moment. "Because we didn't come here first." She walked toward the posters. "If you were a little kid and saw the cute commercials, then saw these posters and toys and all that stuff, then I think that's exactly what they would have looked like. Because you already have those images in your head," John said. He tore the Freddy poster off the wall and stared at it momentarily before letting it fall to the ground. "But we know better. We know they're monsters, and we're afraid of them," Charlie said. "And so we're seeing them for exactly what they are," John concluded. Clem went up to the arcade mascots again, his gun still drawn. He went back and forth in front of the displays, looking at them from different angles. "How did you find me?" Charlie asked suddenly. "You showed up like the cavalry, just in time. How did you know I was here? How did you know any of this was here?" No one answered right away. John and Jessica looked to Clay, who was casting his eyes around the room purposefully. He looked like he was searching for something specific. When he followed, he trailed off. Charlie looked at each other of the three of them in turn. "Who?" she demanded. But just as she spoke, the closet door burst open, banging against the wall with a ringing clatter. The twisted Freddy, who had taken Charlie, came crashing out, his mouth still unhinged and swinging unnaturally. He was a nightmare's version of the Freddy they know as kids, with searing red eyes and the musculature of a monster. He turned his elongated head from side to side wildly, his jaw bouncing in place. "Run!" Clay yelled, waving his arms and trying to usher them together toward the door. Charlie was rooted to the ground, unable to take her eyes off the maw of the beast. "Wait!" Jessica cried suddenly. "Clay, these aren't possessed like the others. They're not the lost children." "What?" he said, momentarily stopping his frantic movement and looking thoroughly confused. "Shoot it!" Jessica screamed. Clay clenched his jaw, then raised the gun and aimed at Freddy's gaping mouth. He fired once. The shot was only a few feet from Charlie's ear and it was deafening. Freddy jerked back, the python-like jaw contracting, and for a split second his image blurred and distorted. The unnaturality stretched mouth began to close, but before it could, Clay fired again, three more times in quick successions. With each shot, the creature seemed to glitch. It blurred, sputtering through the edges. Freddy's mouth curled on itself, not quite closing but shrinking inward as the bear hunched forward around its wounds. Clay fired one last time, aiming for Freddy's head. Finally, the animatronic toppled forward, a misshapen head on the ground. Freddy's image flickered like static on a television screen. The color faded from his fur. Then everything that made him Freddy winked out, leaving only a smooth plastic figure in his place. He looked like the rest of the animals in the room, a blank mannequin stripped of its characteristics. Charlie approached the thing that had been Freddy cautiously. The ringing in her ears was beginning to fade. She crouched down next to the creature, tilting her head to the side. It's not like the other mascots from Freddy's, she said. These aren't made of fur and fabric. They're made of us, by twisting our minds. The words came out with a revelation she hadn't expected. Charlie, John said softly. He stepped forward, but she ignored him. She touched the creature's smooth skin. It felt like something between plastic and human skin, a strange, malleable substance that was a little too soft, a little too slick. The feeling of it made her nauseous. Charlie leaned over the body, ignoring her disgust, and plunged her fingers into some of the bullet holes. She plunged around in the slippery, inorganic stuff of the chest cavity, pretending not to hear Jessica and Clay's protests. And then she found it. Her fingers touched the disc, which was bent in half, almost broken. Charlie pried out a second piece of metal that was wedged beside it. She stood up and held it out to the others. A bullet rested in her palm. You shot the chip, she said. You killed the illusion. No one spoke. In the momentary quiet, Charlie was suddenly aware of the racket they had just made. In his place, so accustomed to stillness, the silence was broken by a clicking sound, the noise of claws on tile. They all whirled to see, and from what appeared to be a dark and empty corner, a wolf-like figure split away from the shadows and stalked toward them, upright but hunched forward as if uncertain whether to walk as a beast or a human. They backed away as one. Charlie saw Clay about to trip on Freddy's collapsed body. She shouted, Look out! He stopped, turning to see, and his eyes widened at something behind Charlie. There! He cried, and fired a shot into the dark. They turned. An 8-foot, misshapen bunny, the rabbit counterpart to the creature on the floor, was blocking the doorway behind them. Its head was too large for its body, with eyes glowing white hot in the dark. Its mouth was open, revealing several rows of gleaming teeth. Clay fired again, but the bullet had no effort. How many bullets do you have left? John said, measuring the two threads still in the room. Clay fired off 3 more shots at Bonnie, then lowered the gun. 3, he said dryly. I had 3. From the corner of her eye, Charlie saw John and Jessica draw closer together, moving a little behind Clay. She stayed where she was as the others retreated, transfixed by the 2 advancing figures, the wolf and the rabbit. She started to walk toward them. Charlie, John said with a warning tone, what are you doing? Come back. Why did you bring me here? Charlie asked, looking from one creature to the other. Her chest was tight and her eyes ached. Then she'd been holding back tears for hours. What do you want from me? She shouted. They looked back at each other with implicated plastic eyes. What is this place? What do you know about my brother? She screamed, her throat raw. She flung herself at the wolf, hurling toward the gigantic beast as if she could tear it apart with her brave, bare hands. Someone caught her by the waist. Human hands lifted her up and pulled her back, and Clay spoke quietly to her ear. Charlie, we need to go. Now. She pulled herself out of his grasp, but remained where she was. Her breath was unsteady. She wanted to scream until her lungs gave out. She wanted to close her eyes and sit very still and never emerge from the darkness. Instead, she looked again from Bonnie to the nameless wolf and asked, her voice so calm it chilled her to hear it. Why do you want me? They don't care about you. I'm the one that brought you here. A voice spoke from the same shadow corner the wolf had emerged from. The rabbit and the wolf strained their posture as if responding to the speaker's command. I know that voice, Jessica whispered. A figure began to limp forward, obscured by darkness. No one moved. Charlie realized she was holding her breath, but she didn't hear anything else, breathing in the silence. Either just the uneven shuffle of whatever was coming. Whatever it was the size of a man. Its body was contorted, slopping to one as it lurched toward the group. You have something that belongs to me, said the voice, and then the figure stepped out into the light. Charlie gasped and heard John's sharp intake of breath. Impossible, Charlie whispered. She felt John move up to stand beside her. But she didn't dare take her eyes off the man who stood before them. His face was dark, the color mottled, and it was swollen with fluid. Cheeks that had been hollowed were now distant with the blow of decay. His eyes were bloodshot. The burst capillaries thronging through eyeballs that looked like a little too translucent. Something inside them had gone bad, jelly-like. At the base of his neck, Shirley could see two pieces of metal gleaming. They extended from within his neck, rectangular lumps stemming from out his mottled skin. He wore what had once been a mascot of a yellow fur, though that remain has now green with mold. Dave? Jessica breathed. Don't call me that. He snarled. I haven't been Dave for a long time. He held out his new hands, blood-soaked and forever sealed a rotting suit. William Afton, then of Afton Robotics, wrong again, he hissed. I've accepted the new life that you gave me. You've made me one of my creation. My name is Springtrap. The man who had once been Dave cried the name with a hoarse glee, then scrunched his gnarled face back into glare. I'm more than Afton ever was, and far more than Henry. Well, you smell terrible, Jessica quipped. Ever since Charlie remade me, set me free from my destiny, I've been master of all these creatures. He crooked his fingers and made a sharp gesture forward. Bonnie and the wolf took 2 steps forward in unison. See, all the animatronics are linked together. It was a system designed to control the choreography for the shows. Now I control the system. I control the choreography. All of this belongs to me. Springtrap shuffled forward and Charlie sprung back. I owe you both another debt of gratitude as well, he said. I was imprisoned in a tomb beneath the stage, scarcely above able to move, only able to see through the eyes of my creatures. He gestured at the two who stood behind him. But for all I could see, I was trapped. Eventually, they would have broken me out, but having you to do it yourself was a delightful surprise. He met Charlie's eyes and a muscle twitched in her cheek. Get away from me. Don't come any closer. As if freeing her thoughts, he started nearer to her. She would have felt his breath on her face if he still breathed. Springtrap raised a bent hand. The fabric suit was rugged, revealing his human skin through the gaps. She could see the places where metal pins and rods had buried themselves alongside his bones and tendons into a rusted shadow skeleton. He touched the back of his hand to Charlie's face, stroking her cheek like a beloved child. From the corner of her eye, she saw John start forward. No, it's okay, she forced herself to say. I won't hurt your friends, but I need something from you. You have to be kidding, she said, her voice brittle. His mouth twisted into something that grotesquely resembled a smile. John heard a faint click and turned just in time to see Clay loading one bullet quietly in his gun. Clay shrugged. You never knew when a corpse may wander out of the shadows wearing a rabbit suit. He raised his arm, steadied himself, and fired. Springtrap recoiled. Kids! Clay shouted. The door! Charlie jerked her eyes away from Springtrap almost painfully, and as if he had been exerting some hypnotic force on her, Bonnie had abandoned the exit, leaving it clear. Clay, John, and Jessica began to run. Charlie glanced back, reluctant to go back, then join the others. They ran back the way they came from, Clay leading the way as they wound through the carnival games and looming featureless mascots. He strode purposely ahead as if he knew the way. Charlie remembered her question that no one had answered. How did you find me? They were chased by sounds, scraping metal and the clack of the wolf's claws. In the open space, the noises echoed strangely, seeming to come from every side. It was as if an army pursued them. Charlie quickened her step. She glanced up at John, seeking reassurance, but his eyes were on Clay ahead of them. They reached the room with the waterfall and began. Clay knew the path. He headed directly for the passage beneath the cliff, where the water emerged. They pressed through one by one. Clay and John were too tall to walk through without bending over, and Charlie felt a quick pang of relief. The monsters won't fit. Halfway through the passage, Clay paused, standing motionless in an awkward position. He craned his neck, studying something just out of view. Clay, Charlie hissed. I have an idea, he said. Two shadows emerged from the far side of the room. Jessica glanced at the backlit tunnel beside them, ready to run for it, but Clay shook his head. Instead, he guided the group backward, none of them taking their eyes off the monsters. All that shielded it from now was the river that bisected the room. The animatronics were approaching the water hesitantly. The wolf shifted at it and shook his fur, and Bonnie simply bent down and stared. Don't run, Clay said sternly. They can't cross that thing, right? Charlie said. As if responding to her cue, the two mascots stepped unsteadily into the river. Jessica gasped, and Charlie took an involuntary step back. Slowly and deliberately, the animatronics continued onward toward them through the waist-height water. The wolf slipped into the smooth bottom and fell. It dunked completely under the water for a moment before scrambling to the side, thrashing violently. Bonnie lost his footing as well, but managed to grab the riverbank and steady himself, then continued forward. That's not possible, Charlie said. Behind her came a peal of laughter, and she whirled around. It was Springtrap, his eyes scarcely visible, peering through the backlit tunnel nearby. What was your plan? He said, incredulously. Do you think my robots would be poorly designed as your father's? Well, then, I'm sure you made them fireproof as well, Clay called out. His voice reverberated in the carnivorous empty room. Springtrap frowned, puzzled. He looked at the water in the stream. It was glistening in the dim light, color glancing on its surface in gleaming swirls like gasoline. Shelley turned to face Springtrap. Open gas cans lined the walls. Some laying on the sides, all were empty. Clay flicked a lighter and flung it into the water. The top of the water caught fire, a flame billowing up like a tidal wave, obscuring the animatronics in the middle. The creatures struggled to the side of the river, emitting guttural, high-pitched shrieks. They managed to crawl into the bank, but it was too late. Their illusions deactivated. Their plastic skin was exposed, liquefying and falling from their bodies into little flaming pools on the floor. Charlie and the others watched as the dissolving creatures fell, writhing in agonized screams. They all stood frozen, mesmerized by the gruesome spectacle. Then from behind her, Charlie heard a quiet scraping sound. She roped around to see Springtrap vanish into the mouth of the narrow black-lit cave. She took off after him, running into the eerie light. Charlie, Clay called. He began to chase her, but the flaming creatures had crawled across the floor, perhaps trying to reach their master, perhaps in mindless desperation, and now they blocked the mouth of the cave with their blazing remains. Charlie set her eyes on the path ahead. She couldn't afford to look back. The passage was narrow and it smelled damp and ancient. The floor felt like rock beneath her bare feet. But though it was uneven, it wasn't painful. The surface was worn and smooth. As soon as the dark of the cave closed over her, she felt a spark from her dreams, the tug of something so like her it was her. Blood calling to blood. Sammy, she whispered. His name glanced off of the cave walls, showing her in the sound of it. The absence inside of her pulled her forward, drawing her toward the promise of completion. It has to be you. Charlie ran faster, following a call that came up from deep inside her. She could hear the distant echo of Springtrap's laughter at intervals, but she couldn't spot him ahead of her. Occasionally, she thought she caught glimpses of him, but he was always gone before her eyes had time to focus on the disorienting glow of the black light. The cave twisted and turned until she had no idea which direction she was headed, but She ran on. Charlie blinked as something moved at the corner of her eye. Just out of sight, she shook her head and ran on. But then it happened again. An unnatural shape, neon bright, slithered out of the wall and wriggled past her. Charlie stopped, clapping a hand over her mouth so she wouldn't scream. The thing undulated up the wall, moving like an eel, though it was climbing rock. When it reached the ceiling, it vanished, but she could see a break in the rock where it had been gone. Just keep going. She started to run again, but suddenly more of them poured out of the seam at the base of the wall. Dozens of wriggling shapes swam and danced, moving along the floor of the cave like it was the floor of the sea. Three of them headed right toward Charlie. The Ripper threw over her feet and she screamed, then realized they circled her, nibbling curiously at her toes. Then she felt nothing. You aren't real, she said. She kicked at them, and her foot passed through empty air. The creatures have vanished. Charlie gritted her teeth and ran onward.